I did message you last night because I saw the news about the portal, and I think I might have shut it down before you responded. I'm not sure. So you were up late because I think NC State probably got some surprises that they don't want to see out of the transfer portal because a handful of guys who said they were coming back decided to enter. So kind of give us an update of where we are.
Yeah, I mean, you had three guys that announced, the last couple of weeks that they were, re-signing with the one-pack NIL collective, Brandon Cisse being one of them, a starting DB for NC State, and then two safeties in Devin Boykin, and then the nickel position in Tamarcus Cooley. The one guy who entered late was Bishop Fitzgerald, who actually just announced and told people last week that he was planning on returning, hadn't re-signed with Savage Wolves or One Pack, whichever one you want to call it, but had basically said, I'm returning. I have an additional year. He was a JUCO player, so he kind of benefited from the Diego Pavia, all that different stuff that was taking place, and the expectation was, hey, you got the entire back half of your defense back for next season. They go out, they hire DJ Elliott as their defensive coordinator. He's supposed to fix the pass rush, the linebackers, the defensive line, and hey, everything's going to be good. Well, you lose 4 of your 5 starters in the defensive backfield, and that's just a massive, massive blow for NC State. To let people know, too, last night, I know a lot of people kind of realized the transfer portal window closed on December 28th. Mm-hmm. The way the rule works is that for teams that play in bowl games, you have an additional 5 days for that window to expand. So last night was the absolute last night that players had the option from NC State anyways to enter the transfer portal. And as you see, 4 players that were critical to what NC State, not only critical to NC State this year, but what NC State wanted to do next year, all entering the transfer portal at the same time is just a really, really big blow.
At Cory Smith on Twitter, Pack Pride. All right, so do we have a reason for this? Are you willing to theorize why? Is this a money deal? Is it a scheme fit? What is it?
Yeah, I think it's for a number of different reasons for different guys. With Brandon Cisse, he's the one that I don't quite understand because he is a starting cornerback. There will be cornerbacks in this system. They're moving potentially to a 3-4. You still have cornerbacks, and he was NC State's best cornerback on the field when he was healthy this past year. So maybe this is a money deal, and at the same time, I do want to offer this as well with a guy like Brandon Cisse. You saw Aiden White do this last year for NC State. You can enter the transfer portal and end up going back to the same team you were a part of before. So there is that option out there for guys like him, and I would probably put Tamarcus Cooley in that argument as well. For guys like Devin Boykin and Bishop Fitzgerald, this is their last year coming up. I mean, this is it for them. Bishop might have another year if the JUCO rules change because he did spend 2 years at the JUCO level, so there is that option. Mm-hmm. But, for those two guys, the thought process is going into this upcoming year, this is your last year. So both of them are looking at it as, all right, I've got to make the absolute most of this last year. The one that, maybe a scheme fit, maybe changes things a little bit there is Tamarcus Cooley, a guy that, he does play the nickel position. So the expectation for him was to come back, play nickel next year. So maybe that mindset changes when you switch to a 3-4 scheme where they're looking for that 4th player in that position to be more of a pass rusher, a bigger body linebacker, and not a nickel position. So they will be switching from 5 DBs to 4 potentially in this scheme. So maybe that changed his mindset. But, if I'm looking at 2 guys that I want back, if I'm, Savage Wolves or One Pack NIL Collective or even this team as a whole, those 2 young players in Cisse and Cooley are guys they're going to immediately target to try to come back because they do not only have next year but also additional years too.
Cory Smith, Pack Pride, is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. Whether you play a 3-4 or a 4-2-5, something tells me in the world of college football where everybody's spreading you out and throwing to multiple receivers, you need probably 7 cornerbacks to get through a season. So whether you're a nickel or whatever, there's always going to be players to cover. Let's talk about the new defensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, DJ Elliott, who wasn't in football last year. I don't know, he was taking a sabbatical, backpacking through Europe. I'm not sure what he was doing. So what do you know about him? How are things going to change?
Yeah, well, what we do know about him from previous stints, he was with Kentucky, he was with Kansas, he was with Colorado, and has been a year at Temple. And everything we heard, while the numbers don't look great, I'm not trying to put a positive spin on this because he didn't have a top 50 defense. So don't get me wrong, like the numbers didn't look great. But from everything we've been told and everything I've kind of read up on as well is, the schemes did improve, at least in the first year. The teams improved. It was just a matter of maintaining that. And a lot of times it led to him either being fired or going to other places. But, the hope for NC State was, like I said, bringing him in as he's technically got the title of defensive coordinator. It's Freddie Autry-Lindsay that will be the co-defensive coordinator. So I don't know how that works. You got a pilot, co-pilot type situation. I'm not entirely sure here. But the hope was, all right, you bring him in, he's going to fix the front half of your defense. He's a guy that specializes in defensive linemen. You think back to, in linebackers, you think back to like a Bud Dupree. There's still a guy in Josh Allen, or Josh Hines Allen, I think he goes by now, that was with him at Kentucky.
Yeah.
A guy that's been a longtime player now with the Jaguars. So he's developed those types of players. He's also been a very good recruiter. The issues has just been, a full defense, having a complete and complementary defense. And like I said, the hope was when you hired him, you've got the back half, the safety net kind of figured out for you in terms of the corners and the safeties. Now you come in, bring us some great defensive linemen, some linebackers, and develop those guys. Well, now you have to reconstruct a complete defense, and I don't think that was the expectation when they hired him 4 days ago, and when he came in 4 days ago either. So this is just going to be a massive undertaking for him and for NC State as a whole over the next several weeks and months now.
Yeah, and every team at this stage, I should say every team, most teams are reconstructing rosters much like NFL teams do. This is the way of the world. At some point, we will figure out, coaches will figure out that they need collective bargaining. Otherwise, they're going to have to do this every single year because there are no rules. And we're not any closer to, we're 5 years away in the current system. We're 5 years away from even approaching a rule that is enforceable by law. We got about a minute or so left. So let me just ask this question. Coming out of the bowl game, going into the bowl game, Dave Doran said it on this show. ECU is not a rival. A rival is somebody you play every year. And I get what he's saying. You don't want to give the little guy their due. East Carolina is like a little brother. But they treated it like a rivalry game. And it was weird circumstances anyway. I don't think we put anything into bowl games. But how much of that and the fact that they lost to East Carolina makes life uncomfortable for Dave Doran?
I mean, I think any loss in a bowl game at this point is going to make things uncomfortable, whether you care about it or not. It's another feather in the cap of people that don't like NC State or don't like Dave Doran in this situation. NC State fans to say he hasn't won a bowl game since 2017. He hasn't done this. He hasn't done that. Well, that's another thing. And then at the same time, whether you cared or not going into that game, losing to ECU and losing in the fashion that they did. After getting conservative in the fourth quarter, and I think that plays into it too. The losing is one thing. I know I got a few seconds to wrap up.
You're good.
But losing is one thing. Losing in the fashion they did, which was just such a typical Dave Doran mentality. You get a slight lead in the fourth quarter and you go conservative. The defense gives up a backbreaking touchdown, 86-yard touchdown. The way that they did, it's just that makes it, sticks in the crawl that much more after, your defense did everything it could to save you. And then another breakdown, the way that it did, those things are all going to stick with this team in the offseason. And as much as people had tried to move on from that and get behind the team after the win over UNC to close the season out, it's all right back in the forefront after losing to ECU in the Military Bowl.
Yeah, and especially with the expectations going into this season, to have it spiral the way it did, to have really no good wins, because Carolina's not good.
Yeah,
it was an unbelievably disappointing year, and I'm sure Dave Doran is more disappointed than anybody else. Cory Smith, Pack Pride at Cory Smith. Happy New Year, my friend. I will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Yes, sir. You have a good one.
You too, Cory Smith.